when I joined WPEngine, and joined the WordPress community, I've been in cloud for nearly 10 years or so, but joining the community 3 years ago, it represented about 32% of the web.
This was 10 years ago?
No, sorry, 3 years ago when I joined
Right.
WPEngine. Today it's 43% of the web. It's a huge increase in just that 3-year period.
And by the web, do you literally mean
all sites?
The whole web? All sites,
all
anything
sites.
that's online?
Yeah.
Huge number.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to spend a lot of time today talking about WordPress, and in particular, the foundation, if you like, of a good WordPress website, which is the hosting. And James, if you wanted to kick us off just by talking to us a little bit about the partnership between Strategic and WPEngine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a partnership that's been flourishing for a few years now, and built on some core principles of how we can best serve our joint clients. We have a few thousand partners actually at WPEngine within the EMEA, about 10,000 globally. But we strategically work with a top line of partners that are very much aligned to how we want to best serve our customers together. And that's very much what we saw in the team at Strategic, and we've been doing some great work together over the last couple of years to better those relationships.
I mean, it works really well for us because we as an agency, we're not necessarily hosting engineers. We don't have our own racks at any of our offices. We rely quite heavily on having a robust partner, because really it allows us to shine in what we do. That's creating great web experiences with WordPress as the foundation and framework. And similarly, for us, what I guess our team here are looking for that WPEngine provide is great customer support, speed, but also the tools and the platform to help us be great at what we do, and for us to not really have to have that headache of worrying about the stack and what type of level of functionality that we might need in the servers and so forth. So do you think that's a good sort of principle for all of your partnerships in terms of whether it's customers coming straight to WPEngine or other agencies and what they're looking for with a hosting partner? Yeah,
definitely. I think if we try and decouple what the WordPress stack is ultimately, and how the partnership comes together. You have WordPress as the core technology, and then you have to put that technology on a platform to make sure you're getting the right performance, getting the security, and then actually there is the build, the development, the whole sort of user journey experience, and digital marketing as a whole aspect of a site, and that's where the partnership comes in. We don't go into that area, that territory. That's yours, and you guys leave WPEngine doing the platform, which creates that great partnership, joint value, which is then creating the great experience for the customer.
And I think there is some great features and tools in there. One of the things that I know our development team that work in-house here at Strategic love is the different environments you can set up very easily on the servers. So, we typically have a staging environment for each of our clients' installations. And then we have a development environment as well, where we can really be experimental, start working on updates, features, changes to our clients' websites. We can then push those changes up to staging, and it's all through the click of a button, really. So there's a lot less technicality in us taking our project work through these various phases, checking it in with our clients before actually testing and taking to production.
Yeah.
Is that something most clients take advantage of?
Yeah, look, I think what is WPEngine set out to try and do to assist partners, and then to obviously benefit the end client ultimately, it's trying to remove those commodity activities that you're having to do, trying to make sure that you can focusing on doing your best work, creating the right experiences for the client, by us trying to automate and move a lot of those responsibilities our side. So those click of the buttons between staging and production are one of those examples.
And is customer support something as well that most customers take advantage of? Because again, that's one of the big draws for us to the partnership. We often act as the sort of intermediary, the middleware between our clients and their hosting. And most technical companies try and hide very far away from having human contact with people that can truly help with a problem. Whereas it's always felt for us that WPEngine's team are there, they're accessible, they're again in-house in the WPEngine offices, and they're very knowledgeable. So one of the things that really we find huge value in is if we do encounter a problem or we have a question around how to execute something, we're always quite blown away with how that expertise exists there, and we see that as an extension of our team. So again, that's a huge value to us that we often don't see with other hosting partners we've used in the past. Is that a key pillar, would you say, of the principles at WPEngine?
Yeah, look, the company's built on two premises. When you think about what is a managed service, it's that platform, it's that product side, but also it's the people, and it's that how you offer that support back to your customers. And through our partner program, what we want to do is, as I say, try and create a partnership, a relationship where we are aligned on processes and activities that make the experience for the client seamless. And a lot of the time that's done through, we've seen where it goes wrong. Okay, we'll mitigate this for future situations. And when we evolve that over a number of partners, it does create great experiences that gives confidence to producing great websites. We're often under time pressures and critical in many different ways.
Okay. And what about sort of scaling up? That's often something, that I imagine you have to encounter quite regularly at WPEngine. There could be small business that launches, becomes popular. They may self-sign up with one of your entry-level individual website packages right the way through to more enterprise clients who need to have an agile, scalable system. Is that something, again, quite common?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what we try and do for our clients is try and make it seamless, so they don't even know what's happening in the background. It just feels like it's working, and that's something we've moved towards over the last few years. Is remove the jargon, the technical sort of mechanics of what cloud is, and just try and make it sort of saying, what do you need the site to do? Okay, well, we're a business that has these spikes throughout the year. Okay, well, let's plan for that. Or actually, we don't know when we're going to need that next burst of capacity, or we've just acquired a business, we need to do X, Y, and Z. So we can be quite flexible and change the need of the solution quite seamlessly for the client.
And I've seen it firsthand with what our clients are asking us for at Strategic, with what people are writing about in the industry, is speed. Speed and performance. Google graced us with Core Web Vitals last year, and we at Strategic are finding that's becoming more prevalent in conversations around website builds, existing websites. And at WPEngine, you have quite a few proprietary tools and things that you do to help with that, because we've seen in our teams that we can literally migrate a website over from somewhere else into WPEngine, and it just literally performs better straight away. Are you able to share with us any of the things, not secrets, but the sort of things that that are happening there on the WPEngine platform? Because I'm pretty sure speed's a big sort of pillar and principle behind your brand.
Speed is a principle. Sort of security is definitely a principle. You're looking at the support aspect of it as well. It's how you make teams more agile to do their best work. They're the sort of the core principles of what WPEngine looks to try and deliver. But speed is one of those things you can look at so many different places in which you can gain performance, and that's what we've done as a company that's over 10 years old now and just purely focusing on WordPress. So you can go to other managed hosts out there, but they'll take it a layer lower, where it's like, hey, we do a great job at managing the operating system, but you choose whatever you want to put on top of it. So we've gone further up the stack to be able to look for performance gains and security gains as you go throughout that, to kind of move those headaches away from yourselves, so you can focus on what you need to do ultimately.
And what things do you have? There's, I believe you guys have got something called like the Evercache. I know there's a plugin that we install on all of our installations. You guys have that partnership with Cloudflare, where you have really good integration. And it kind of feels like a lot of this is out of the box. You've just got to turn it on and configure it. And as I've mentioned before, we do quite literally see a performance increase whenever we migrate a site over. So, and am I correct in saying those are mainly proprietary to WPEngine? Yeah,
obviously Cloudflare is something you can go and get yourselves, but it's the partnership that we have between Cloudflare and our platform, thinking about WordPress and how we can just make that, to your point, like out of the box, turn it on with a button, and it works to the best of its ability. So that's what we're doing across those partnerships. And also with the big cloud providers like Google and AWS, how do we get the best out of those platforms so you don't need to worry about that? But obviously every part of the layer, the database aspect of it, or the front end, how do we make those as fast as we possibly can? And yeah, elements of that are proprietary, and we've worked hard to try and make that the best that is available out there in the market.
But there's only so far things can go though, right? I'm assuming there's also a lot of responsibility in your experience on the developers who are building the website. And often I see that the longer a website's been around without a ground-up rebuild, it tends to gather contributions to the theme's code base, or it tends to gather plugins, almost kind of like playing Buckaroo. The more you put onto it, it can quite literally keel over. Do you often find that there's only so much that the platform performance-wise can do when you have a sort of project inbound, and ultimately you guys do a lot of work educating clients to actually sort of help give them some awareness that in order to speed their website up further, they've got a little bit of work to do in actually looking at the code base that they're bringing on top of WordPress.
Yeah, this is why the partnership's so key, because if you're not aligned with the partner that you're working with on behalf of the brand, you end up finding that the camps are separated and almost pointing fingers at each other. And that never helps the customer, ultimately. So I think what we try and do with a lot of our top partners is trying to make sure we've got that alignment, and then we understand where the challenges might be, the bottlenecks and so forth. But you're right, the platform can only do so much. And I'm sure that's the case of where you've inherited a site from another agency. There's probably a whole ton of work that needs to be done there on the front end to kind of make the performance go faster.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of expectation management. We've had many clients that we've taken sort of supportive custody of, perhaps whilst we're building a new website, and often we find that we can do some sort of dismantling of plugins that don't really need to be there, and sometimes as well just simply updating things to the latest version, updating plugins and the core WordPress does help. But what we have often found, though, is that there can be a bit of a tangle of years of code and functions in there which don't need to be there. Perhaps things that maybe people have programmed into WordPress that it can now do natively. So yeah, we found that when we've worked with clients with an existing website that we either have to look after until a new one is ready, or even just working and nurturing and evolving a fairly new website, we can slim it down quite considerably. But having that good hosting and that sort of performance infrastructure that WPEngine Cloudflare offers, we tend to actually find we can get some pretty good results without having to resort to a full rebuild. So why do you think, James, though, that WordPress is so popular? I mean, do you have any sort of stats that you've kind of come across recently that just kind of demonstrate why WPEngine, even in the first place, chose to double down and go all in on WordPress as a CMS partner?
Yeah, I mean, obviously WordPress was always a fairly well-used CMS, but it's really gained popularity as the years have rolled on. It started in 2003, so it's coming up for nearly 20 years old now. And when I joined WPEngine, and joined the WordPress community, I've been in cloud for nearly 10 years or so, but joining the community 3 years ago, it represented about 32% of the web.
This was 10 years ago?
No, sorry, 3 years ago when I joined WPEngine. Today it's 43% of the web. It's a huge increase in just that 3-year period.
And by the web, do you literally mean
all sites?
The whole web, all sites, anything
all sites.
That's online.
Yeah.
Huge number.
Yeah, and actually, if you think about it more specifically to content management systems, it's over 65% of that marketplace. So we actually did some research, which hopefully we can perhaps share the study, because it's got more than I can cover off in here. But we wanted to understand what that economy looked like. So we actually did a study pulling in all the various different agencies, the hosting companies, all the plugin providers, the users of WordPress, to really get a sense of what is the economy for WordPress and what is its direction ultimately. So we did that at the end of 2019 into 2020, gathered all that results and published it in 2021. It's a $600 billion economy, which if you were to try and put that into sort of countries in terms of a country's economy, it'd be the 39th largest in the world. Which, if you think about it against some other big businesses out there, that's kind of now bigger than Apple's App Store. So it's significant.
Wow, didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was predicted to grow some sort of 6% over the course of 2021. And with the way that the world is moving more towards digital and online, we know things such as the amount of customer interactions that happened online before the pandemic was in the sort of 40% range, and in particularly in the US, that went up to the 65% range. That was just last year. We haven't seen what the results are going to be this year. So everything is moving in that direction. WordPress is very easy to consume. And there is this misconception, WordPress is for the lower end of the market. But actually, that's not quite true. It has also shifted into the enterprise over the last sort of 5 years or so, to the point now where actually, if you think about the top 10,000 sites by visitor traffic, 35% of those are built on WordPress as well.
Huge number. I mean, why do you think that is? Because I can I can give my perspective, but I'm conscious I'm a little bit biased because I used to be a very hands-on developer, and I always consider myself an early adopter of WordPress. I remember working with WordPress for the first time sort of 2007, maybe 2008, so it's its very early stages. It was very much a blogging platform, but I actually believe that even today, if you look at its kind of core components, it's stayed simple. It is still primarily set up as a content authoring platform. It hasn't really grown in complexity like other platforms have. And whilst I've had personal hands-on experience with other CMS platforms, e-commerce systems that have become very complex, like Adobe's Magento, do you feel it's maybe the simplicity of WordPress and its kind of adaptability to really help and suit any business or enterprise that makes it still so popular to this day?
Yeah, look, we know that there are systems out there that are right for certain scenarios. And we go back to that enterprise story. We know that actually 80% of enterprise businesses will have a secondary CMS, and more often than not, that is WordPress, and it's growing in that space. And that's where it kind of started in the enterprise. And the conversations that we're seeing now across our enterprise brands are actually, hey, can this now work? Our .com, our primary site, could this work on WordPress? Can we go and get a workshop and understand what this would be, bringing in partners to understand that story and that journey? And 9 times out of 10, you can remove that proprietary cost, you can reduce the time to market down, you can give the flexibility back to get the best in breed scenario for the clients, because when you think about digital transformation, it's not go monolithic and try and keep it all together. We're seeing more and more stories where it's, okay, how can we make ourselves nimble? And that's before we even talk about headless and all that type of stuff. But it certainly serves quite a few needs and is easy to get going with.
And it's widely supported. I assume if it's the biggest CMS out there, and it has been for a while, that means a lot of people can work with it. And so therefore, I think getting support for working on a WordPress platform isn't like trying to find that niche unicorn development agency that specialises in something. So do you think that's the case across the sort of globally with developers, that pretty much most developers, front end or back end, have got the ability or already have experience of working with WordPress?
Yeah, there's something like over 500,000 developers out there that can be working on WordPress. They've got those skill sets. We personally have done quite a bit of research looking at agencies and understanding the landscape and putting in which agencies have WordPress development skills within their workforce. Most of them do. Not to say that all of them are utilising it today, but it's usually where a developer has started in PHP on WordPress and has worked through and may have transversed into other technologies down the line, but it's certainly there and available. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot more agencies adopt it now. We're out there talking to agencies all the time about whether they'd like to understand more about what WordPress can do in the enterprise and how we can support them with that. And more often than not, an agency is open to that conversation today.
Okay. So it's widely supported, open source, but WordPress carries a bit of a misconception or myths about it sometimes. We find when we're talking to clients, even in their RFP, it might say, guys, we'd love to have a new website. We think we want WordPress. Could you help us out here? We are predominantly a WordPress specializing agency. We do other things, and our development team are very talented across quite a few disciplines and platforms. But we staked our sort of our kind of brand with WordPress as well. But we have people say to us, well, yeah, but isn't WordPress insecure? Isn't it vulnerable to attack? I've seen instances. A friend of mine worked at a place where, their whole site was brought down and so forth. And I know my perception of that, but I'm interested to know if it I'm sure it aligns with yours as to why you think people carry that concern with WordPress.
Yeah, the thing is, WordPress, you can go and get it off the shelf at WordPress.org, and you can go and build it yourself. And you've got to therefore kind of understand, like, okay, am I doing all the right things to try and protect myself, protect the site and my customers? And do I know that? And also, have I got the time to make sure I'm getting that right? And so, again, if we work with the right agencies that have got the credentials there and they are doing that day in, day out, and then you're partnering with a hosting company that's taking a lot of that headache away, so it's not off the shelf there, it's off the shelf from us. When we've done a lot of those flight checks already, you can remove a lot of those headaches. So, for example, most of the vulnerability scares that you hear about WordPress, over 52% of them exist in the plugin layer, out-of-date plugins ultimately. Well, we launched a technology today, what we call Smart Plugin Manager, which automatically updates that to remove that headache for you and to be able to pass that information back to the partner to be able to then work on what needs to be solved for. And out-of-date core aspects of WordPress as well, the actual WordPress as a baseline technology. A lot of the time, there's something ridiculous, like over 50% of websites aren't on the latest version. Well, that's something you can't do on our platform. Otherwise, we won't be able to hold up to the managed service SLAs and credentials that we want.
No, so I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think core WordPress, irrespective now of hosting platforms it's on, it has a certain level of ability to update itself if you've got the server configured to turn it on. That was at one point something WPEngine were doing for a long time. WordPress changed to allow people to do that on pretty much any hosting platform, but the plugins is a different game altogether, because you can very easily upgrade a plugin. It can break the site or change how things work, so you've got to be very careful with that. So I suppose it's easy to see why 52% or so of WordPress sites are not fully up to date, because often people don't necessarily have developers on hand to look after and maintain and test those plugins. And it doesn't necessarily have to be labor intensive, but it is a process and it's part of that. And if there's so many websites out there on the internet, and hackers are sort of trying to vandalize or target sites, they've got quite a big pool of sites to go for. And do you think maybe that's why WordPress carries that reputation? It's just because it is so popular that people see it as an easy opportunity to target, because if somebody advertises a vulnerability, people can obviously go looking for websites out there to exploit. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say, but I think that's why you've got to work with the right selection of partners to mitigate those, ultimately.
Definitely. I mean, security is a concern. We've talked about a lot of other things in our discussion so far around good support and speed. But is there anything else that you see, customers or even partner agencies like ours asking for, that what they want from their hosting, what they want from WordPress?
I think what we're seeing today actually is how can you make my life easy, ultimately. So they don't actually want to understand much of the technology. They just want to know that this is actually what works for us and what will work for our business, particularly in the enterprise space. So they want support in that regard. They want to know that actually you've got those the ability to help them with their ever-changing requirements. So actually one of the things that I mentioned earlier that's come to light over the last couple of years is actually people want to understand how to do headless WordPress. And before, it was very much a case of agencies on the fringe of that sort of technology, sort of, I guess, cutting edge, trying to do those things out of a managed service world and to try and solve for a specific use case. Whereas now we're seeing a lot more agencies and brands asking for a headless experience, but they want it in a managed service fashion. So that is something that actually we launched as an enterprise offering over the last 12 months, and it's really taken up at quite a pace, actually.
And that's Atlas. You guys did a lot of R&D into this, and you shared some of it at the summit last year.
We did, yeah. So Summit's our annual event that we do to sort of showcase, the great things that you can do within WordPress. We launched this technology called Atlas. Which is fantastic. So it's allowing businesses now to utilize the best of WordPress, but giving them the freedom to be able to work in a flexible front end.
Fantastic. I mean, I do think that's where things are going, which we can come on to, I suppose, in a moment. But similarly, from an agency perspective, we are seeing a lot of our clients, almost even sometimes on live pitches, asking for us to demonstrate there's three key things that stick out to me. Really good performance, so load speed, particularly in terms of how Google decide that load speed scores. Accessible CMS, so in terms of being able to construct and build, agile, personalized pages without breaking the system. And security, something we didn't really sort of hugely talk about when we sort of kicked off the conversation around, some of the key things that I like about WPEngine. But we're finding some people asking us to sort of do live demonstrations of these on calls and sessions. And I've even had people asking for us on calls to give us some of the sites that we've maybe built recently, so they can literally drop them into the various tools, could be GT Metrics or Google PageSpeed, just to appraise those. But we've been doing a lot of work recently, working very closely with the support engineers at WPEngine to take what's now pretty much quite a few and now all of our client websites to the best possible level with page speed scores. We've been doing a lot of writing about it. And would you say that's quite common from what you're seeing across other partners and clients? Just it's speed, security, and just really being able to fully utilize WordPress?
Yeah, absolutely. I think There is so much you can do if you invest time into getting things right with a website. We're not seeing that as a common theme across our broad customer base, but again, it's where we're working most closely with our top partners. We're able to assist in those conversations and advise end brands in those scenarios to get the best out of the technology stack that they've got, for sure.
Excellent. Okay. And what do you think's next for WordPress? Always hard to predict, but what would you say? What would your predictions be for the next couple of years?
Yeah. Well, I think it's in line with the growth of the market, right? So I don't think we're going to see WordPress tail off. All of the indicators are that WordPress is going to move towards 50% of the web as we climb towards 2025 and beyond, which is encouraging. Whether it's going to be all of the web in terms of the front end and the back end, or whether you're actually going to see a real burst of headless WordPress technologies, I think that's going to start coming through. And how at the moment that's quite a niche end of the market, but will that become sort of more, I guess, democratized and be more available to more people to get the best out of WordPress? I think that's definitely going to be a trend coming through. And obviously e-commerce is a growing trend for obvious reasons that's been well documented. But perhaps WordPress hasn't been hugely associated in terms of WooCommerce to running some of those fantastic sites that are out there. But it is a great technology and something that we've also invested in over the last 18 months or so to be able to, again, to the same principles that we've done with core WordPress, is to do the same with WooCommerce, is to be able to offer great managed services in terms of product and support to be able to make lives easier for brands that want to utilize that technology. I
think e-commerce is a huge one you touched on, and I would assume that the events of the pandemic have pushed a lot of traditionally maybe brick and mortar businesses into getting online shop. I think the huge growth in Shopify, that sort of self-service, that kind of SaaS e-commerce way of getting online. But WooCommerce for me as well fits into that space. It's a very clean, agile system. It's accessible. It isn't as complex as other e-commerce platforms that are out there. So, again, for us, we've seen that growth in WordPress, and I think WooCommerce with WordPress will continue to grow. We're investing a lot of time and focus into it. We have WooCommerce clients of our own, and that is a platform that we've also chosen to back. But you touched on headless earlier, James, and sort of WPEngine's endeavour to provide that managed service. Do you feel that also will sort of continue, and WPEngine and other partners will get there?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely, and how they're all going to intertwine. So you've got e-commerce, you've got headless, from a content side, how will that come together as headless commerce, and how can we solve for that sort of challenge? It's definitely, they're the big themes that we're seeing at the moment, and the whole need for a managed service offering across the board is certainly not going away.
Great. Okay, well, James from WPEngine, thank you so much for joining us at Strategic today. Really enjoyed the chat, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Likewise. Brilliant. Thanks very much,
Thanks, James.
Cheers.